Discovering matches from a bar I'd never set foot in was my first clue. Letitia, how could this happen? My heart, once brimming with trust and affection, shattered as I connected the dots of her betrayal. The surveillance cameras, intended to validate my doubts, revealed far more than I anticipated, unmasking a harsh reality of deceit within the walls of my home. This story, entangled with technology and heartbreak, is a testament to the relentless search for truth. This is my journey. Enjoy watching. Asher Phillips reclined on his bed, staring at the small object that had inflicted so much pain. It was a seemingly innocuous item, a simple pack of paper matches, just under 3 inches wide and 2 inches tall. From the side, it looked like a tiny wedge. He opened it and counted the matches. 35, as always. 5 were missing, a number that remained unchanged. He wondered why he bothered to count them again, perhaps because sadness had taken over. The pack was plain white, with bright pink writing on the flap that revealed the matches. At first glance, the color seemed like a soft purple, but a secretary at work had corrected him, calling it fuchsia. Others referred to it as magenta. Online, he discovered they were essentially the same. The exact color didn't matter, but every glimpse of it left him feeling a pang of sorrow. The pack bore no phone number, address, or map, just the elegant inscription, the Puma's Den. Initially, Asher didn't understand its significance. Now, he sometimes wished he had never discovered its meaning. Sometimes, ignorance is preferable. With nearly an hour to spare before calling his sister Sandy, Asher reflected on everything since he first found the unassuming matchbook 2 months ago. It was a Thursday night, close to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Asher Phillips was due to call his wife Letitia, as he did each time he was away in Colorado Springs. Although it was only 7 p.m. Mountain Time for him, he planned to unwind with some sports on TV after their call. At 37, Asher was tall and handsome, with brown hair and blue-gray eyes. He envisioned his wife, Letitia, a year younger than him, eagerly waiting by the phone. He could almost picture her, short, with dark brown hair and eyes, a smile with dimples, and a figure that complemented her 5'4" stature. He smiled at the thought of returning home the next night. Each month, he traveled to his company's office in Colorado Springs to manage computers and servers. While the local manager assisted, Asher's expertise was crucial for keeping everything running smoothly, just as his bosses desired. This routine had been in place for a year and a half, ever since Abstract Devices Inc. acquired a major competitor in the city. His trips were always the same, flying from Dayton, Ohio on Wednesday afternoons and returning Friday nights, dedicating Thursday and Friday to ensuring the software was fully updated. Ensuring the antivirus was up to date and that every computer had only the necessary software was crucial. The company operated from 2 large buildings, one for production and the other for office operations. With a multitude of computers and central control systems linking them all, maintaining everything in perfect order was no small feat. Since they manufactured tech for the Army, unexpected inspections were a reality. The Army conducted these checks annually, without prior notice, and it was Asher's responsibility to ensure everything passed without a hitch. On Wednesday night, Asher called Letitia to let her know he had arrived safely and to comment on how much better the weather was compared to the rainy Ohio forecast. Their conversation lasted about 15 minutes, as usual, and ended with their familiar "I love yous." He spent the rest of the evening catching up on work emails. After a few hours, he turned off the TV and lights, heading to bed with the anticipation of returning home the next day. Thursday night brought with it the promise of just one more night away from home. Asher kept an eye on the clock, eagerly awaiting the time for his usual call to Letitia. As the clock neared 7 p.m., he dialed her number. Letitia answered on the second ring, mentioning she was well but had a busy day. She worked as a sales manager at a major furniture store in Dayton Mall and also oversaw sales teams at 4 other locations in the city. With only a day and a half apart, there wasn't much to discuss, so they joked about whose job was more demanding. The call ended with their customary "I love yous," and Asher settled into bed to watch baseball. It wasn't until he was lying comfortably in bed that he remembered he hadn't told Letitia about his earlier flight arrival time. The new schedule meant he would be landing in Dayton at 7 p.m. instead of the usual 10 p.m. He was pleased with the change, as it meant he'd get home earlier. He had checked his ticket and found out about the rescheduled flight, which adjusted for new routes. Asher thought the change was a good thing and planned to ask Letitia out for a drink and a dance, something they hadn't done on a Friday in a while. At 9:20 p.m., he called home again, but Letitia didn't answer. After the phone rang 4 times, he left a message, assuming she might be busy with chores or laundry, as she often was when he was away. He shrugged it off and returned to his game, quickly forgetting the missed call. Asher had left Colorado Springs early, skipping his usual lunch at a diner. Instead, he grabbed a sandwich from a vending machine and snacked a bit at the airport. Arriving late, he made his way to Dayton International Airport, retrieved his car from the long-term parking, and drove home via I-75 South, taking the Miami's Berg-Centerville Road exit. Just before 8 p.m., Asher pulled into the quiet street of their West Carrollton home. Asher pulled into the garage of their cozy home on a quiet street in West Carrollton, a suburb southwest of Dayton. It was a place he and Letitia had both grown to love. Their short commute to work was a huge plus. The house had originally belonged to Asher's parents, who had moved to Florida for retirement and gifted it to Asher and his sister Sandy. Later, Asher had bought Sandy's share, taking out a mortgage to make it happen. He had lived there for a decade, a year before marrying Letitia, and it was the perfect spot for them, with its 3 bedrooms offering ample space for future children. As Asher parked his Ford next to Letitia's new Chrysler in the garage, he wondered if she had received his message about going out for a drink. He hoped she would be up for it and that he could quickly shower and change first. His day had been packed and hectic, especially with the early airport run, and he was eager to freshen up. Within 10 minutes of arriving home, Asher found himself in the bathroom with Letitia. She gestured to a spot on the edge of the bathtub, saying, "Move some of these candles, then sit here." She adjusted her position to face him and leaned in for a kiss. After the kiss, Asher asked, "What made you want to try something new? Not that I'm upset." Letitia's smile broadened as she replied, "I read an article in a women's magazine about making your husband happy. It said guys really appreciate the full experience." She paused before adding, "I also asked Denise about it." Asher's smile faltered slightly. Denise Grady, Letitia's old friend and a recent divorcee, was someone he had always found unsettling. Denise had a knack for making him uncomfortable, having once playfully grabbed his backside in front of Letitia and laughed it off when he reacted unfavorably. To Asher, Denise embodied everything his dad would describe as too forward. Denise Grady, a 38-year-old with a strikingly altered appearance, was someone Asher had never quite warmed to. With her platinum blonde hair and surgically enhanced figure, she was undeniably eye-catching, though it was her ample chest that drew the most attention. She was attractive, but Asher had always been unsettled by her readiness to flirt with married men. He and Letitia had clashed over his reluctance for her to spend time with Denise, fueling their arguments. Letitia stood up in the tub, rinsing off the soap with a handheld shower head, her movements deliberate. "I know you don't like Denise, but she's not that bad," she said, clearly trying to diffuse the tension. As Letitia extinguished the candles, Asher joined in to help. He assisted her out of the tub and took pleasure in drying her with one of the plush towels she had set aside. Avoiding the confined space of the bathroom, he led her to their spacious bed. Letitia followed willingly, a sign that the evening had left them both content. Saturday morning found Asher awake before Letitia. As he lay there, replaying the events of the night, he felt a contented smile spread across his face. They had explored every possible avenue of intimacy, their exhaustion a testament to the night's satisfaction. Just as he began to drift back into thought, the pressing need to use the bathroom brought him back to reality. He slipped out of bed carefully, avoiding any disturbance, and made his way to the bathroom. After tending to his needs and brushing his teeth, Asher noticed the candles still scattered around the room. As he began to tidy them up, he spotted 5 burned matches on the vanity. They were wet, likely extinguished by running water. Asher tossed them in the trash and then picked up a plain matchbook lying on the counter. He wasn't a smoker and rarely had use for matches, so it was odd for him to notice it. The matchbook was white with elegant script reading "The Puma's Inn." It struck Asher as an unusual name, one that lingered in his memory. He placed the matchbook on the shelf with the other matchbooks Letitia used for her scented candles. Come Monday morning, as Asher enjoyed his coffee break with colleagues, he brought up the odd matchbook. With a casual tone, he asked, "Ever heard of something called the Puma's Inn?" He mentioned it was just something he'd seen on some matches, but didn't know what it was. His query elicited blank stares and shrugs from his group, indicating no one had any idea what he was talking about. As the conversation drifted to other topics, Asher's curiosity remained unshaken. Later that day, while searching through phone books and online resources for the Puma's Den, he found nothing of interest. Most people would have given up, but Asher wasn't most people. He was determined to unravel this mystery, just as he did with work problems. His mind kept returning to the elusive matchbook as he sat down for dinner with Letitia that evening. Between bites of steak, Asher casually asked, "How come I missed you when I called on Thursday? You got my message, right?" He laughed off the question and headed to the kitchen for steak sauce, oblivious to the fleeting flicker of worry that crossed Letitia's face. When he returned, Letitia was ready with her response. "I had just talked to you and went to shower before bed. I didn't hear the phone ring. I got your message in the morning. So, you're staying longer than planned." Asher chuckled, explaining how the airline had updated their schedule, and he'd barely noticed the change. He had always been accustomed to the old times, so he was relieved he caught the new departure time on his ticket. They continued their meal, eventually enjoying a slice of chocolate cake Letitia had baked over the weekend. While savoring the dessert, Asher broached the topic again. "Letitia, when I was cleaning up the candles on Saturday, I came across this matchbook from a place called the Puma's Den. Any idea what that is? I've never heard of it." This time, Asher's gaze was fixed on Letitia, who exhibited a brief, almost imperceptible flash of concern. It was a stark contrast to her usual demeanor and left Asher uneasy. "I don't know, Asher," she said hastily. "I must have picked them up somewhere, probably at work." She quickly stood to clear the dishes, her back to him, which made her response seem even more evasive. Asher's curiosity was piqued, and he made a mental note of her reaction. Though he wasn't entirely sure why, he sensed that Letitia was hiding something. Her reaction didn't align with how she normally responded to such questions. The following morning, Asher pocketed the matchbook before heading to work, hoping someone might recognize it. The matchbook stayed in his pocket for most of the day. Late in the afternoon, while reaching for his knife to trim a bothersome chip on his nail, he pulled out the matchbook instead. He examined it again, noting its plain white cover with the unusual name. Later, he showed it to his colleagues in the main office, inquiring if anyone had heard of it. The responses were all negative, but he did discover that the color of the matchbook, which some described as fuchsia, was a topic of debate. It seemed the mystery of the matchbook was only deepening. As the workday drew to a close, Asher's curiosity about the matchbook had intensified. During a quick meeting with the tech help team, he shared the curious find with them. While Jason and Carl, seasoned technicians, merely glanced at the matchbook before returning to their tasks, Jim, the new recruit fresh out of college, perked up with interest. "Yep, I know that place," Jim said, eyeing Asher with a knowing grin. "Where'd you find these? I'd bet you've never been there." His laughter hinted at an inside joke. Asher, intrigued and slightly taken aback, asked, "Why wouldn't I have been? What's so special about this place?" Jim's grin widened. "You don't exactly fit their crowd. You're either too old or not the right gender." Asher was even more confused. "You're going to have to explain more, Jim. I'm just curious about where these matches come from. I don't even know what the name means. Can you fill me in?" Jim chuckled again and began, "A puma is another word for a cougar. And the Puma's Den is a bar over on the east side. It's on Indian Ripple Road, right where it turns off East Dorothy Lane, just west of I-675. Asher's face lit up with understanding. "Have you been there? You seem to know a lot about it." "Yeah," Jim said with a nostalgic tone. "I've been there a few times. Had some memorable experiences, let's just say. Got a few bruises from enthusiastic patrons and ended up going home with someone each time. It's a place that keeps a low profile, doesn't even advertise as a bar. The sign is small, and they rely on word of mouth. Asher's interest was clearly piqued. What kind of crowd do they attract? Jim leaned in, his tone becoming more animated. It's mainly single or divorced women between 35 and 60, and younger guys they call cubs up to their mid-20s. The women buy the drinks, and the place gets really busy later in the week. Oddly enough, Saturday isn't their peak night. Wednesday through Friday is when it's really hopping. Asher noted the detail about the cubs. So the young guys are called cubs? That fits with the cougar theme, I suppose. Jim nodded. Exactly. It's mostly a place where older women seek younger men, and when they find someone, they tend to leave quickly. The drinks are pricey, partly because of this quick turnover. Some women just stick around to dance, but most leave once they've hooked up with someone they like. Jim's eyes gleamed with a mischievous glint. And don't worry about not finding it. The place likes to keep it secretive. A guy from my dorm told me about it. Seems like you're really interested now. Sure. As the conversation wrapped up, Asher left with more questions than answers, but he felt a deep sense of intrigue about the mysterious bar and its unusual clientele. As they wrapped up their conversation, Jim's casual demeanor and easy smile left Asher with more questions than answers. Jim had painted a vivid picture of the Puma's Den, a place that seemed far removed from Asher's ordinary world, but one where Letitia's friend Denise would undoubtedly fit right in. The thought made Asher uneasy. While he trusted Letitia, Denise's presence in their lives was a source of friction. He hoped the matchbook had somehow found its way into their house by accident, and that Letitia had no connection to the bar. Jim's style, a mix of cool rebellion with a tattooed arm and a hint of facial hair, seemed an odd match for Letitia, but the unsettling thought lingered. Asher couldn't shake the idea of Denise and wondered if she had brought the matches during one of her visits. Returning home before Letitia, Asher carefully placed the matchbook back on the bathroom shelf where it had been. He didn't want her to notice his preoccupation with it. Later, they enjoyed a dinner at the Alibi Club, where Letitia's upbeat mood led them to a bar next door for drinks and dancing. The evening was pleasant, and Letitia's enthusiasm in the bedroom that night made Asher forget, at least temporarily, the nagging worry about the matchbook. Yet, the matches haunted him. Despite Letitia's efforts to make him forget, the question of where they had come from lingered. Asher tried to convince himself that Denise might have brought them by accident, perhaps as a gift for Letitia's candles. But deep down, his certainty wavered. By Monday, 10 days before his trip to Colorado Springs, Asher was still troubled. A weekend of yard work had given him time to think, but the worry about Letitia's fidelity was relentless. Sleep had eluded him, and at 2 a.m., he resolved to find some answers to calm his mind. By mid-morning, Asher sought out Jason Shields in technical services. Jason, an expert in surveillance gear, was someone Asher trusted for discreet information. They met in a conference room, away from the usual bustle of the office. "Jason, I need your help with something a bit unusual," Asher started, laying the matchbook on the table. "I found these matches in my bathroom, and they've got me a bit concerned. Any chance you recognize the place they're from?" Jason glanced at the matchbook, his expression shifting to one of mild curiosity. "Let's take a closer look," he said, focusing on the matches. As they spoke, Asher hoped that Jason's insight would shed some light on the mysterious matches and help him put his doubts to rest. Jason was a large, imposing figure with graying hair and a voice that resonated with authority. Despite his tough exterior, Asher knew Jason as a genuine and knowledgeable guy. Today, Asher needed that expertise for a personal Dillanora. "What's up, Asher? Got a security worry?" Jason asked, his tone steady. Asher took a deep breath. "I've got a situation that's not work-related. I need your advice, but it's a bit delicate." Jason nodded, his demeanor open and receptive. "No problem at all. I'm here to help however I can." Asher hesitated, unsure how to start. "I'm not sure what I need exactly. Maybe you can point me in the right direction. I'm wondering if there's a simple way to listen in on things at my house. I'm feeling uneasy and need to know if something suspicious is happening when I'm not around." Jason's expression softened as he listened. "I understand, Asher. I went through a similar situation myself. I had a divorce about 18 months ago. It was the surveillance gear I set up that revealed my wife's affair with our neighbor. Asher nodded, absorbing Jason's experience. That's precisely what I'm worried about. I don't have any concrete evidence, but I'm troubled. It started when I found a matchbook from a place I've never heard of, a bar called the Puma's Den. According to Jim, it's a spot where older women meet younger men. I can't picture my wife Letitia going there, but her friend Denise might be the type who frequents such places. Recently, Letitia's behavior has changed, and I'm concerned she might be trying to cover something up. I even found the matches in the bathroom, and when I asked Letitia about them, she seemed evasive. I'm looking for reassurance that nothing is wrong. Jason gestured to 2 chairs and invited Asher to sit. Let's talk about this further. I've been through something similar, so maybe I can offer some insights. But remember, every situation is unique. Asher explained his concerns in detail. I don't have hard evidence, just some unsettling signs. Letitia's been more interested in sex lately, and I've read that can sometimes be a sign of guilt. Plus, she seems to be interested in new things she wasn't before. I know it sounds strange to worry about that, but it's part of my confusion. Jason nodded, taking it all in. I get it. You might not have as much to go on as I did. In my case, it was noticeable when my wife started working late without any corresponding increase in income. I set up hidden cameras and tapped the phone. That led me to discover her affair with the neighbor at a hotel near the highway. It was a tough blow, but the evidence was clear. The neighbor ended up divorced, and my ex's situation isn't exactly clear now. My kids are with me, and it's been a tough adjustment. Jason's expression softened. But let's focus on helping you. I recently came across some new surveillance gear that might be just what you need. It's compact, but it delivers excellent sound and video quality and can connect to a computer via Wi-Fi. I'll grab a magazine from my desk to show you the details. Jason stood up, then added, I'd offer you my old cameras, but I've lent them out. I do have a phone recorder, though, and I can bring it in tomorrow. It should help with what you need. As Jason left to fetch the magazine, Asher considered the possibilities for placing surveillance equipment. He was ready to take action, but everything would hinge on what Jason had to show him. When Jason returned, he was animated, holding the magazine and eager to help Asher navigate through his concerns. Jason flipped open the magazine to a page showcasing the latest surveillance technology. Check this out, he said, pointing to a sleek gadget. This little device transmits both audio and video to a PC or network through Wi-Fi. It can operate on battery or be plugged in. They even have models that blend in as everyday items, like a clock radio, an air freshener, or a carbon monoxide detector. Asher leaned in, intrigued as Jason navigated the manufacturer's website on his laptop. The range of options and features was impressive. This looks like exactly what I need, Asher said, a hint of relief in his voice. How quickly can we get it? I want everything set up before my trip in 10 days. Jason skimmed through the site and discovered there was a dealer in Cincinnati. I've worked with this seller before. They offer fast shipping. Overnight should be no problem. I also happen to know their sales rep, Heidi Westerberg. We went to high school together in Zinnia, he added with a nostalgic smile. I think she lost her husband a while back. Maybe I can use this opportunity to reconnect, not just on a professional level, but personally too. We dated back in the day. Asher nodded, intrigued by the possibility of a quick order and a personal connection for Jason. Sounds good. Let's pick out what we need and place the order today. Hopefully, it'll arrive by tomorrow. They selected 4 top-of-the-line devices and placed the order. By noon, Asher was back in his office, the transaction completed. Jason was already deep in conversation with Heidi when Asher left. The next day, Asher received his shipment and eagerly examined the equipment. The quality was impressive, and despite his company's stringent rules, he was eager to set everything up. Jason had also brought the phone recorder as promised. It was straightforward to use. Plug it into the wall and then connect the phone. The recorder's battery had ample capacity for multiple conversations. Asher was pleased with the high-quality equipment and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Taking the following day off for his surveillance setup, Asher started his day with a light breakfast at an IHOP, waiting for his wife to leave for work. He kept his day off a secret, intending to use the time to set up and fine-tune the system. By 9:15 a.m., Asher was back home, his car tucked away in the garage to avoid detection. He began with the first camera, a compact black box with a Wi-Fi stick and a power plug. He affixed it to the side of their living room stereo with double-sided tape. The camera had a clear view of the living room, front door, and part of the kitchen. The next camera, cleverly disguised as a functioning clock radio, went into their bedroom. Asher felt confident it would be nearly impossible for Letitia to notice the switch since they had stopped using the old clock radio alarm. In the guest room, Asher set up another clock radio-style camera, which he didn't think would raise any suspicions. The fourth camera was installed in the basement game room, positioned discreetly on the side of the TiVo box. Although the room was rarely used, Asher wanted coverage there as well. Lastly, Asher set up the phone recorder in the basement. It was connected to an old, seldom-used phone, with the plug hidden behind the couch. After a quick coffee break, he meticulously checked each room, ensuring that the new equipment was well hidden and functioning properly. Asher didn't encounter any surprises as he set up the new software and familiarized himself with its functions. By noon, he was comfortably monitoring live footage from his living room. The clarity of the video was excellent right from the start. By 1 o'clock, he had fine-tuned the image quality and configured the motion detection feature to his liking. The system was programmed to record whenever movement was detected and continue for 2 minutes after it ceased. After ensuring everything was set up correctly, Asher decided to test the system's response. He walked into the living room, grabbed a snack, and then left the room, leaving the system to do its job. Returning to his home office, he waited for the 2-minute recording window to close before reviewing the footage. The video quality was impressive, but he noted that the audio range was limited to about 15 feet. Asher took his time adjusting the remaining cameras. Nearly an hour passed as he carefully positioned them, ran tests, and reviewed the results. Each camera performed as expected. To ensure thorough coverage, he spent a few minutes in each of the 4 monitored rooms, checking the video and audio quality. Everything appeared to be functioning well. Concerned about potential storage issues, he decided to let the system run for a couple of days to gauge if his hard drive could handle the data. For the phone recorder, Asher conducted a quick test call using the kitchen phone to contact his secretary. He followed up with a short, simulated conversation from his cell phone to ensure the device was capturing clearly. Jason had given him an extra memory card, which he swapped in quickly, then plugged the test card into his home computer. Listening with headphones, Asher was satisfied with the recording quality. Knowing Letitia usually returned by 5, but occasionally came home earlier to avoid traffic, Asher decided to leave the house before her return. He spent the next hour and a half at a quiet internet cafe, catching up on the news and sipping coffee. The week went by without incident. Letitia seemed oblivious to the new clock radios and the other surveillance devices. Asher had prepared a story just in case she noticed. If she asked about the clock radios, he planned to say he'd snagged a great deal at a discount store. For the other devices, he would claim they were for home security, citing recent break-ins in the area. By the end of the week, the 4 cameras had been recording non-stop for 5 days. Asher kept a close eye on his computer's storage space, making sure there was enough room for the data. He felt a sense of reassurance, though the question of whether Letitia would ever discover his covert setup remained. Sunday night, Asher swiftly swapped the memory cards in the phone recorder and transferred the audio files to his iPod. The manual had promised this feature, and it worked seamlessly. He decided to hold off on listening to the recordings until Monday at work. He didn't want Letitia to catch him reviewing footage from their bedroom, and he was relieved to see that the video files wouldn't take up too much of his hard drive, even with his upcoming 3-day trip to Colorado Springs. On Monday, Asher caught up with Jason Shields, eager to share how well the new cameras and software had performed. "Thanks, Jason. Your contact in Cincinnati came through. The phone recorder is working perfectly. I've got 5 days worth of audio on my iPod, and so far, everything sounds normal. That's a relief." Jason shook Asher's hand with a grin. I should be the one thanking you, Asher. I've been in touch with Heidi a few times since our order. We've got a dinner date this Friday. I'm heading to Cincinnati early to pick her up. If we hadn't talked about your concerns, I might not have reconnected with her. They shared a laugh, both hopeful about their respective situations. Here's to hoping Heidi and I have a great time and you get some peace of mind, Asher said, shaking Jason's hand once more. Later that afternoon, Asher left work early under the guise of personal errands, but his real goal was to review the recordings from the past week. He wanted to ensure everything was functioning correctly and clear out old footage to make room for new data. He had listened to all the calls on his iPod and found nothing unusual, though he suspected Letitia might be using her cell for private conversations. The video footage was in good shape, though he noted that audio clarity diminished beyond 15 feet. After reviewing and deleting old files, he reset the system, readying it for another round of monitoring before his trip. He felt a pang of disappointment as he erased footage of intimate moments, but reassured himself that he could always come up with an explanation for the gear. Letitia came home as usual, oblivious to Asher's early return. They enjoyed a pleasant dinner and later settled on the sofa to watch a movie. As they chatted about the film, Asher draped his arm around Letitia and said, "That movie was fun, wasn't it? I liked how it had a touch of grown-up romance." He touched her face gently, leading to a deep kiss that rekindled their connection. After a while, Letitia pulled back and said, "You know, that movie made me think. Maybe we should start thinking about having kids. What do you think?" Before Asher could respond, Letitia kissed him again, more passionately than before. "Wow, Letitia, you haven't kissed me like that in ages. Maybe we should watch movies more often," Asher remarked with a smile. Letitia's mood shifted as she continued. "It's been a while since we talked about having kids, and now I'm feeling ready. My job's been frustrating, and I'd be happy to leave it behind. Maybe this is the right time to start a family." With his trip to Colorado Springs approaching, Asher's days flew by. He barely noticed the cameras around the house and didn't think much about them while at home. It seemed Letitia hadn't discovered their presence, or at least Asher had no indication that she had. On Wednesday, he left work an hour early, intending to go home, delete the old footage, and prepare for his trip. Asher made sure everything was set before his trip by replacing the batteries in the phone recorder and swapping out the memory card. He transferred the old files to his computer, wiped the card, and tucked it away in a drawer. He wished he could access the cameras from his work laptop, but he had to wait until he got home to review the footage. That morning, Letitia had woken him up with an unexpected tenderness, a pleasant surprise that set the tone for the day. "That should hold you over until Friday night," she said with a smile. As Asher flew from Dayton to Colorado Springs that Wednesday afternoon, he couldn't shake his unease. The time change provided a small advantage. He could dive straight into work upon landing, avoiding the hotel until later. After picking up his rental car, he headed directly to the office. Louis Dempster, the local boss, greeted him with concern. "Whoa, Asher, you look pale. Everything okay?" Asher forced a smile and reassured Louis, "I'm fine, just a bit off. Maybe something from the plane?" Louis offered him some Alka-Seltzer, but Asher declined, insisting he was fine. "It's probably nothing," he said, shaking off the concern. After catching up on urgent issues at the office, Asher checked into his hotel. He pulled down work emails and local reports, but his mind kept drifting back to Dayton, wondering about Letitia, his home, and what the recordings would reveal. He skipped his usual dinner at the hotel restaurant, feeling uneasy and unable to eat. He used to enjoy meals here, but today was different. Around 20 minutes before 7, Asher left his unfinished meal, paid, and retreated to his room. Stress gnawed at him, and he grabbed some antacids and ginger ale to calm his stomach before calling Letitia. After taking 4 antacid pills and sipping the ginger ale, he dialed her number. She answered quickly. "Hi, honey. How was your flight?" Asher tried to keep his tone light, though he felt the weight of his worries. "It was fine. How are you?" He joked. "Aren't you afraid of picking up the phone like that? What if your boyfriend called?" Letitia's response was sharp and hurt. "You know I don't have a boyfriend, Asher," she replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. Asher, feeling a wave of guilt, quickly reassured her. I was just kidding. Don't be upset. He took another sip of his ginger ale, hoping to ease his discomfort. Letitia's laughter was a small relief, and she shifted the conversation to their upcoming plans. I'm glad you don't have to take a late flight back. It'll be nice to have you home early. They continued talking about various topics, but Asher's mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with the cameras and the possibility of discovering something unsettling. After hanging up, he tried to focus on the baseball game on TV, but his thoughts were consumed by the surveillance footage. He was anxious about whether he'd set up everything correctly and whether his computer would handle the data. As night fell, Asher decided to go to bed early, though it was still light outside due to the time difference. Exhausted from the day and hoping the antacids had worked their magic, he fell asleep quickly, his stomach finally feeling better. The next morning, he awoke refreshed, ready to tackle the day ahead. After a satisfying breakfast, he headed to work, mentally preparing for a long day. When he stepped off the elevator, there was Louis Dempster, as if he had been waiting. Asher couldn't help but wonder if Louis had a knack for timing or if he just lingered near the elevators. Morning, Asher. You look better today. Ready for the day ahead? Louis Dempster greeted Asher with a concerned look. I'm good now. Must have been something from the flight, Asher replied, brushing off the earlier unease. Didn't get to the reports yesterday, so today's going to be extra busy. They headed to their usual meeting room, with Louis holding the door open, as he often did. Asher noted Louis's attentiveness, which, while well-intentioned, felt a bit too much like ingratiation. Despite months of frequent visits to Colorado Springs, he wasn't quite sure how to read it. The day sped by as Asher buried himself in work, trying to push thoughts of the accumulating video files and phone recordings from his mind. By the end of the day, they were ahead of schedule. Asher managed to finish his meal at the hotel restaurant before making his nightly call to Letitia. When Letitia answered after just 2 rings, she sounded cheerful. They avoided discussing the offhand comment Asher had made the previous night. Their conversation was light and lasted about 10 minutes before it was time to hang up. Asher took the lead in their final exchange. Well, honey, I should let you go. Just wanted to say I love you and hope you head to bed soon. Letitia's response was slightly hurried. I'll head to bed soon. Love you too. I know it's early for you, but have a good night. Bye, dear. Her rushed farewell added to Asher's unease. The next morning, Asher woke to the sound of his cell phone alarm. Unlike the restless night before, he felt more refreshed, but still troubled by Letitia's odd response. He noticed a renewed unease in his stomach, which Louis observed and commented on. Asher shrugged it off, and they both focused on wrapping up their tasks before Asher's flight home. The day ended early for Asher and Louis, allowing Asher to head to the airport with plenty of time to spare. He returned the rental car, checked in, and grabbed a quick bite at a local eatery. Despite his efforts to stay calm, he couldn't shake his worries about Letitia and what he might uncover on his recordings. Asher nearly called home again to check on Letitia, but hesitated, fearing it might raise suspicions. He hoped to find clarity once he reviewed the footage and recordings. The worst-case scenario was discovering something troubling, and he wanted to avoid making any premature conclusions. Arriving home, Asher noted Letitia's car in the driveway. As he slipped quietly into the house, he was tempted to sneak a peek at his computer before greeting Letitia. However, as he approached their bedroom, Letitia's voice called out, I'm waiting for you, love. Come get cleaned up. I want you here with me in bed. Moments before, he had heard her joyous laughter. Faced with a choice between confronting his fears or embracing normalcy, Asher opted for the latter. Opening the bedroom door, he was greeted by the soft glow of candles and Letitia lying on the bed in a familiar thin blue nightie, one he hadn't seen in ages. Wow, Letitia. It's been a while since I saw that. I've missed it, he said, feeling a wave of relief. Her gesture dispelled some of his worries about infidelity. How quickly can you get cleaned up and join me? Letitia asked with a smile. Asher quickly undressed and headed for the shower, noticing candles scattered around the bathroom. He saw a pack of matches on the vanity, noting that they weren't the ones he had worried about earlier. After a quick shower, he glanced at the matchbooks, noticing the old ones were now at the bottom of the shelf. As he joined Letitia in bed, she asked, "How was your day, love? I know these trips are tough. You look so tired." Asher wanted to express his stress and concerns, but settled for a reassuring, "I'll be okay now that I'm back with you." While lying beside her, he realized his worries had faded. Letitia's genuine affection made him forget his anxieties. As they were about to make love, Letitia asked, "What did you get me from Colorado Springs?" Her love and attention made him feel a sense of peace, pushing aside his lingering doubts. Asher slept soundly that night, but as morning approached, he considered sneaking off to review the video files. Before he could make a move, Letitia stirred and stopped him. "Why not stay in bed, Asher? I'll shower quickly and whip up a big breakfast for us," she suggested, a touch of concern in her voice. "I know you had a busy time in Colorado Springs, and with your flight coming in earlier, you must have worked extra hard." Asher, feeling reassured by her offer, nodded in agreement. As Letitia walked to the bathroom, her movements graceful, he closed his eyes and drifted into a light, restful sleep. It wasn't long before a gentle kiss and a soft whisper roused him. "Sorry to wake you, Asher. Breakfast is ready whenever you're done with your shower." In the kitchen, Letitia had prepared Asher's favorite meal: 2 eggs, sausages, hash browns, and toast. It was a rare treat they seldom had time for amidst their busy mornings. Asher, touched by her effort, expressed his gratitude. "This looks fantastic, Letitia. Thank you. It's just what I needed." He kissed her quickly and took his seat, savoring the meal. Letitia wished she could make such breakfasts every day. "You should have it more often," he replied, though their conversation didn't touch on the video and audio files he was eager to check. After a light lunch around 1 p.m., Letitia mentioned she wanted to visit Dayton Mall to find an anniversary gift for her parents. She reminded Asher that they were expected on Sunday afternoon, a detail he had forgotten amidst his concerns. They briefly discussed possible gifts, but Asher deferred to Letitia's choice. Letitia left for the mall at 1:30, informing Asher that finding the right gift might take some time. He seized the opportunity to check his surveillance setup. As soon as Letitia's car disappeared into the garage, Asher hurried to his computer room, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Upon entering, he immediately checked his computer, relieved to see it was on. He hoped, though, that it hadn't captured anything incriminating while he was away. 4 large video files awaited him, and he quickly set up the viewing program to watch them simultaneously. The program was designed to handle multiple feeds, displaying clips from each camera in sync and allowing him to switch between them with ease. Asher started with slow motion, viewing himself leaving for Colorado Springs on Wednesday. He then sped through the footage, focusing on the evening of his departure. He saw Letitia using the kitchen phone, engaged in routine activities before preparing for bed. She undressed, took a shower, and turned off the bedside lamp shortly after 10 p.m. The videos went dark until Thursday morning, when Letitia followed her usual routine, leaving for work by 8:45. As the day's footage resumed, Asher noticed something unusual. At 8 p.m., Letitia entered the bathroom with clothes from a drawer near their bed. The camera footage was obscured for a while, but when it resumed, Letitia emerged from the bathroom wearing a blue bra and matching underwear. Around 8:45 p.m., she appeared in her black skirt, which ended about 3 inches above her knee, and a light blue top that made her bra visible through the fabric. Asher recognized the outfit from previous occasions, but felt a twinge of concern. Letitia had once worn a blue top under her bra, but now she had chosen to wear her blue blouse with 4 buttons open, revealing the delicate lace of her bra beneath. Asher expected her to change outfits, thinking this was just part of her decision-making process, but she didn't. Instead, she headed towards the kitchen, and Asher switched to the living room camera to track her movements. He saw Letitia walk to the phone and stand there, seemingly waiting for a call that never came. As she eventually made a brief call, Asher's unease grew. Her actions were beginning to confirm his fears. Letitia was deliberately avoiding him and likely meeting someone else. The footage revealed Letitia standing at the front door, reacting to a sound from outside, a knock, a car horn, or perhaps a voice. She opened the door and stepped out, leaving Asher with an unsettling sense of foreboding. He paused the video, feeling a sharp pain in his stomach, and grabbed some antacids, wondering if the stress was taking a toll on him. Returning to the computer, he resumed the video. The living room camera flickered back to life, showing the time at nearly midnight. Asher's heart sank as he saw 4 figures enter the house: Letitia, her friend Denise, and 2 unfamiliar men. He paused frequently, absorbing every detail. Denise and one of the men settled on the couch, while Letitia and the other man, wearing a Dayton University jacket, followed. Denise's interaction with her companion was affectionate and intimate, which only amplified Asher's anxiety. Letitia soon mirrored Denise's behavior. The blonde man started unbuttoning Letitia's blouse, and despite her initial resistance, Letitia seemed to relent, murmuring, "Let's take it slow. We have all night." Her laughter and the ensuing conversation revealed a level of intimacy that crushed Asher's hopes. "I bet you wish mine were as big as Denise's," Letitia said, and the man responded, "No, I like yours just the way they are." Asher watched, helpless, as the blonde man continued undressing Letitia. She seemed to accept his advances, uttering, "That feels better." His distress mounted as Denise undressed, revealing her figure in a way that reminded him of certain provocative online personalities. Unable to bear it, Asher paused the video, tears blurring his vision. He tried to dry his eyes, but the reality of Letitia's betrayal was overwhelming. He continued to watch, shrinking the video to fast forward through the scenes, unable to face the rawness of the moment. He was struck by the explicitness of what he saw, realizing that his marriage was unraveling before his eyes. Asher knew he needed to leave, for both his sake and Letitia's. He feared that if Letitia returned and found him in such a state, he might act out of desperation. He left a note on the kitchen table that simply read, "Gone for a walk." With a heavy heart, he left the house, forgetting to lock the door, and began wandering aimlessly, consumed by a maelstrom of sadness and anger. Asher's initial anger had crystallized into a cold resolve to confront Letitia and seek a divorce. He was torn between the need to act swiftly and the realization that hasty decisions might undermine his plans for retribution. The prospect of rushing into divorce proceedings without fully understanding his legal rights and responsibilities seemed ill-advised. He knew he needed professional advice, especially given the looming concerns about STDs. As he wandered, his thoughts gradually became more organized. A clear plan of action began to form in his mind. He decided that revenge would be a necessary part of his path forward, but he also recognized that Letitia wasn't the sole culprit. Denise Grady, his wife's friend, played a significant role in this betrayal, and the men seen on the video, though nameless and faceless, also deserved some form of accountability. Even the bar where Letitia met these men was a player in this scheme of infidelity. After sitting on a park bench for over an hour, relishing the quiet and the solitude, Asher felt a semblance of clarity. Revenge, he mused, might offer some solace, but it wouldn't undo the past 10 years of his life. The warm air and the slow passage of time helped him contemplate his next steps, making him more resolute about facing Letitia with a strategy rather than blind rage. 3 hours had slipped by, and he knew he had to return home before his prolonged absence raised suspicions. With a plan roughly sketched out in his mind, Asher made his way back, steeling himself for the confrontation that awaited. When he arrived, Letitia was preoccupied with preparing dinner. Her question about his long walk was met with a casual, dismissive response that quelled further inquiry. Despite his simmering anger, Asher maintained a facade of calm. He was determined to keep his true feelings hidden, focusing on preserving his financial and personal interests in the event of a divorce. The evening passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Letitia's sudden display of concern, taking his temperature and checking on his well-being, felt almost surreal. It was a stark contrast to her behavior just days before, when their trip to her parents' place in Franklin had been a source of tension. Asher played the role of the attentive husband with practiced ease, even though every touch and gesture felt like an act. As he prepared for bed, the weight of his plans pressed heavily on him. He was anxious about the impending confrontation and the emotional minefield that lay ahead. The idea of engaging in intimate moments with Letitia was almost unbearable, but he managed to go through the motions, aware that every interaction was part of a delicate balancing act. The evening's activities had only heightened his sense of unease about what was to come. Asher's reluctance to engage in any intimate activity with Letitia was becoming a heavy burden. Despite his desire for revenge and his planning for a divorce, he knew he had to tread carefully. The thought of having to play along with Letitia's expectations to potentially reduce his sentence by a few years was distasteful, but he was resigned to the possibility that it might become necessary. What he really needed was time to let his plan unfold and to gather more information. He hoped his responses during their recent discussions would be enough to throw Letitia off track. When it comes to their spouse's desires, men typically comply with them, don't they, dear? Letitia had asked, a playful smile on her face. Asher considered her question before answering. I think there are definitely some things a husband might not agree with. There are limits that some men simply can't cross. He watched as Letitia's smile faltered, though she didn't respond further. Their conversation drifted back to more mundane topics for the rest of their lunch with Letitia's parents. The discussion around the dining table eventually turned to the topic of sustaining a long and happy marriage. Letitia's mother, Patricia, had said, "Respect for each other and for your partner's ideas is crucial. Without appreciation, a marriage can't survive." Asher seized the opportunity to make his point. So keeping our wedding promises, like staying together through tough times and not seeing other people, is essential, right? Patricia nodded. Exactly. You have to stand by your partner even when you disagree on things like politics or religion. Respect is key. Asher glanced at Letitia, noticing her smile fading. To shift the conversation, he turned to his father-in-law, Jim. What's your perspective, Jim? With 45 years together, you must have faced challenges. Jim, a man of few words, took his time before responding. I agree with Patricia. Today's couples often lack respect and are too focused on themselves. Patricia and I never faced those issues. Asher felt a surge of relief and enthusiasm. I think we're on the same page. Why do you think so many marriages are falling apart? I recently read that nearly half end in divorce. Patricia responded, It's because younger couples lack patience and aren't willing to work through minor issues. Plus, there's more drug and gambling addiction nowadays. Asher added, and there's the issue of sex addiction, like that golfer who had numerous affairs. Patricia dismissed this with a wave. That's just classic adultery, nothing new. Her disapproval was evident, but it didn't change the fact that such behaviors were major contributors to the high divorce rates. Asher decided to bring Letitia back into the discussion. What do you think about what your mom just said, Letitia? She makes some valid points, don't you think? Letitia, caught off guard, had a deer-in-the-headlights look, but quickly recovered. Yes, she's probably right. The conversation soon shifted as Letitia managed to steer it away from the uncomfortable topic. By 10 o'clock the next morning, as Asher worked in his office, his friend Jason Shields walked in. Jason's smile faltered upon seeing Asher's troubled expression. What's wrong, Asher? Jason asked. Honestly, I was going to ask about the performance of the monitoring system while I was away, but your reaction makes it seem like it didn't go well, Asher replied. Jason took a seat and said, It's possible that you're just better at hiding your feelings at home, or maybe it's just that I recognize a troubled look. I've been in a similar situation myself. It's easier to spot when you've experienced it. Asher leaned back in his chair, feeling a bit more at ease as he listened. Jason's words echoed his own fears and uncertainties. Asher leaned back in his chair, the weight of his revelations pressing heavily on him. I never thought I'd be in this position, he began, his voice tinged with resignation. At midnight last Thursday, Letitia and her friend, who I've told her I can't stand, brought home 2 college guys. I can barely force myself to watch the videos of it. It took everything in me not to confront her right then and there, and she's still oblivious to what I know. I need to be prepared before I talk to her. I'm planning to get back at her and her friend, maybe the bar they go to, the Puma's Den, and I'm still figuring out the rest. Jason's face tightened with concern. What kind of revenge are you thinking, Asher? I hope you're not planning anything that could hurt someone or land you in legal trouble. It could cost you your job or even make it hard to work in this area again. if it gets out. Asher managed a tight smile. I'm not planning anything illegal or violent. I've got a meeting with a lawyer next week. He's tied up in court right now. I'm also looking into other ways to handle this. I'm getting STD tests and blood work done on Wednesday, but if she has something, I probably have it by now. I suspect this isn't the first time she's done this, and while she insists on condoms, that's no guarantee. Nothing I do will undo the damage she's caused. My goal now is to make things as difficult as possible for her, starting by letting her think I'm still deeply in love with her. When I finally act, I want it to hit her hard. Jason's expression softened with understanding. I did something similar. I made sure everything was legally set and then delivered the divorce papers to her workplace. The shock value was immense. Asher nodded thoughtfully. I haven't gotten that far yet, but it's worth considering. Right now, I just feel like I've hit a breaking point. It's not just about the cheating, it's the disrespect and deceit that have gone too far. They're so brazen, they don't even seem to care about the consequences. I'm sure if Letitia knew I had the footage, she'd be packing her bags. Asher's demeanor shifted from troubled to determined as he spoke. But enough about my problems. How did your dinner with Heidi go? Was it a success? Jason's face lit up with a smile. It went incredibly well. We had a great time, and there's definitely chemistry between us. I think she enjoyed it as much as I did. Asher raised an eyebrow. So any plans to see her again? Jason's grin widened. Yes, we're going to a play on Friday night, and we might catch a Reds game on Saturday. I'm thinking of spending the night in Cincinnati. How about you? Any plans with Heidi? Jason shook his head. No plans like that yet. I've got a room booked at the Super 8. I want to take things slow, especially after everything with my wife. I need to make sure I understand everything before diving into another relationship. It's a shame my ex's actions have made me wary of women in general, but I don't think Heidi is like that. Still, it's hard to be sure these days. Asher nodded, his expression somber. I understand that feeling. Standing up, Asher suggested, let's grab a coffee. I've got some work-related stuff to go over now that you're here. I'll get your phone recorder back to you later this week. I haven't changed the memory chip with the calls from that night yet. I need to listen to them. Jason chuckled. Funny you mention that. My neighbor thinks his wife might be cheating. I told him he could use the recorder after you. It seems like everyone's dealing with this kind of stuff. Asher sighed. Nothing would surprise me at this point. I'm done with the video kit too. I'll pack it up and let you use it after your neighbor. After work, Asher retrieved the phone recorder and video equipment, feeling a sense of finality. By the time Letitia arrived home, he had already transferred the sound file to his computer and cleared the memory card. The cameras and clock radio were back in place, making the house look as it did before. He hadn't listened to the sound file yet, but he planned to take a day off later in the week to review it and go through the video files. As Letitia entered the kitchen, she greeted him with a kiss and said, I hope you don't mind waiting for dinner. I'm making something special tonight, a new recipe from my mother. Asher was relieved to see her acting so casually, which reassured him that she didn't suspect he knew about her infidelities. He smiled to himself, certain that his plans would soon bring the resolution he sought. Asher felt a flicker of satisfaction as he crafted his plan, though he knew he might never inflict on Letitia the distress he himself was feeling. Still, he was determined to make her experience a fraction of the turmoil he had endured. After their late lunch together, he told Letitia he was feeling unwell and planned to go to bed early. Her concern was evident as she checked his temperature and found it normal, but Asher was resolute in his deception. The next morning at work, Asher created a new folder on his computer titled Mr. Plants, a name that would mislead anyone who stumbled upon it into thinking it was work-related. In reality, the folder was a repository for his schemes of retribution. He had outlined his plans and set deadlines for himself, including several actions he intended to carry out by the end of the month. First on his list was to consult Jason. He called and asked him to drop by his office when he had a chance. Jason, who was working on Asher's floor, agreed to meet at 8:30. When Jason arrived, Asher laid out his ideas and asked for his feedback. He trusted Jason enough to share his plans, confident that Jason would keep them confidential. Their discussion was thorough, and Jason contributed some innovative ideas. One of Jason's suggestions involved causing a stir at the bar where Letitia had met her young lover. Asher felt it was a fitting way to address the harm he believed such places caused to marriages. Jason suggested they could create the illusion of an STD outbreak at the bar to deter patrons. Though Asher joked about wanting a real outbreak, Jason's idea of fostering fear was pragmatic. They continued refining their plan, and once Jason left, Asher did some quick research online. He called the Montgomery County Health Department, and after a brief conversation, hung up with a smile. Later that day, Asher attended a doctor's appointment for routine blood tests. While waiting, he overheard a conversation between Dr. Nelson and another patient. "Dr. Nelson, I'm here to check on my test results," the patient said. Dr. Nelson replied, "You have a garden-variety urinary tract infection. I'll prescribe some medication. Be sure to avoid unprotected sex until the results are clear, and you might want to get your partner checked too." Asher's ears perked up. He was intrigued by the idea of using a UTI as a cover for postponing intimacy with Letitia. He concocted a plan based on what he overheard and decided to put it into action that evening. When Letitia came home, Asher called her into the living room. "Letitia, I think I've figured out why I've been feeling off. I noticed some soreness while urinating, so I saw Dr. Nelson yesterday," he began. Letitia's face turned to one of concern. "What's wrong, honey? Is it serious?" Asher waved her concerns away. "It's not a big deal. Dr. Nelson said it's a common UTI and gave me medication. He also mentioned that it's easy for women to catch these infections and suggested I use a condom until we're sure the infection is gone." He produced a blister pack of pills from his briefcase, showing it to her. The package had 13 large tablets, and he explained, "The doctor said I should take one pill a day for 2 weeks, and it's important to get checked too. He even gave me a bottle for a urine sample if you want me to drop it off for you." Letitia's initial worry was palpable, but she quickly composed herself. Okay, I'll get tested. Is it all right if you take it to the lab?" Asher hid his smile behind a practiced demeanor. "Yeah, I can handle that." Later, Asher and Letitia sat outside with their coffee, watching the sunset. Asher sensed Letitia might have something on her mind, perhaps suspecting that he knew more than he let on. He wondered if she had begun to suspect that he was onto her deception. After a while, Letitia turned to Asher and said, "I've decided to stop taking my birth control pills after this pack. According to my calculations, my first fertile period will be during the week after your next trip to Colorado Springs. Are you okay with that? There's a chance I could get pregnant right away, but I'm not saying it's guaranteed." Asher took a sip of his coffee before replying, "It's up to you. I'd like to have a child, but I'm fine with whatever decision you make." Letitia's face lit up with happiness at his response, and she quickly jumped into his lap, causing coffee to spill over the table. "Thank you, Asher," she said, while showering him with passionate kisses, both of them oblivious to the coffee spilling everywhere. Though Asher felt uneasy about getting this close to her, he knew that avoiding intimacy completely would look suspicious. He accepted that, to execute his revenge plan, some compromises were necessary. At precisely 8 in the morning, Asher entered the technical services department and signaled for Jason to come over. Jason was there to meet him. "Jason, I've got a coffee for you. Could you spare me a few minutes? I have something quite interesting to share." They walked into the vacant conference room they had used before, sat down with their coffees, and Asher began his story. "As you know, I've been trying to avoid having sex with my cheating wife while planning my next steps. To be honest, I haven't even had a chance to meet with my lawyer yet." Jason shook his head. "I knew you were worried about that. Were you concerned it would be difficult to pull off?" Asher grinned and said quickly, "So, I was at the doctor's office yesterday, getting checked for STDs, and I overheard him talking to another patient. The guy had a urinary tract infection, and the doctor gave him a note for medication and told him to avoid sex without protection until he's clear. That conversation gave me a brilliant idea. After my appointment, I stopped by the drugstore next door and got a bottle of health pills. I even slipped the pharmacist an extra $2 to pack 14 pills into a blister pack like the old school ones. It was a perfect setup for what I needed. Jason interrupted. Is that the kind where you push the pill through a thin metal foil? That's right, Asher replied. So I came back here and made up some fake labels for it. I even added an expiration date. Took me a couple of minutes online to get the details and about 5 minutes to print out the labels. Asher laughed. Letitia bought it all. I even snagged a pee-test bottle from the clinic. She's so worried about catching what I have that she gave me her sample to take to the doctor. I dropped it off on my way to work, and tomorrow I'll call her at her job to say she's all clear. Jason shook his head. That's really clever. I wouldn't have thought of that. Well, I needed a quick solution, Asher said, and hearing that doctor talk was like a wish come true. As for the bar plan, it didn't take long to come up with this. If my test results come back clean, that's a bonus. This morning, she brought my prescription to me with my coffee, and she did it first thing. Letitia might even be worried she spread the infection due to her questionable behavior. If I weren't afraid, she might call the doctor's office herself to check on the results. I'd let her stew over it for a few days. Before heading back to his office, Asher answered a few questions from Jason. More inspired than ever, he was piecing together his plans for revenge and no longer had to worry about avoiding intimacy with Letitia. His enthusiasm was growing daily. In the remaining days of the week, Asher tackled his work with renewed energy, satisfied with the action plan he had devised to deal with Letitia. By Friday, during lunch hour, Asher received the letter from the Montgomery County Health Department that he had been expecting. He scanned the letter and the envelope while copying photos into the Mr. Plans folder on his computer. He had a clear idea of his revenge plan and was starting to get a handle on it. The only remaining issue was figuring out how to deal with the 2 college guys who had visited his house. After discussing it with Jason, Asher agreed that they were just typical young men who happened to take advantage of an opportunity. Over the week, Asher accepted that he would need to revisit the damning videos. He needed to review all the footage for his new plans. When Letitia went out shopping on Saturday afternoon, Asher headed straight for the computer room. He was only planning to listen to the phone calls for now, not ready to watch the videos just yet. It took Asher over half an hour to sift through the calls, all the way up to the last one he had from Colorado on Thursday night. Listening to his conversations with Letitia felt almost surreal, as if they were performing a rehearsed script. He could predict each word before it was spoken. Until that Thursday night call, everything seemed normal. But when the call ended, Asher cranked up the volume, his tension mounting as he anticipated the next call's revelations. Hello, Dennis, it's Letitia. Did he call? I figured he might call late and delay us. No, everything's fine. Asher called right on time like clockwork, Letitia said with a hint of laughter. Letitia continued, I'm ready. You can pick me up whenever. Okay, Letitia, I'm on my way. I'll honk when I get to your place. Just keep it quiet. We don't want the neighbors noticing. One of them might tell Asher about you picking me up. He can't find out or even suspect anything. I'll be there in about 5 minutes. I would have been there sooner, but I had to stop for condoms at the drugstore. Letitia's laughter punctuated her words. Good thing you reminded me. I don't have any because Asher never needs them. And honestly, I wouldn't count on those guys having any. They're not exactly thinking with their heads. Dennis chuckled. I hope I find someone who's a bit more thoughtful. Letitia laughed again, said her goodbyes, and hung up. As Asher listened to his wife's conversation, his anger flared, intensifying with each word. He made a duplicate of the call before moving on to other recordings, quickly losing interest in the rest. After verifying his copy of Letitia's call, he deleted the remaining recordings from the phone. It had been over a week since he'd last watched the video evidence of Letitia's betrayal, and the brief segments he'd seen had dulled his emotional response. But hearing her conversation with Dennis brought all those feelings rushing back. Throughout the weekend, Asher found solace in avoiding Letitia by immersing himself in yard work and organizing the garage. It was inevitable that he'd have to see her at mealtimes or bedtime, but he used his full days of work as an excuse to head to bed early after his shower. On Sunday, using the garage phone, Asher called his sister Sandy. Although he didn't expect Letitia to answer, he was ready with an explanation just in case. He invited Sandy, who ran a flower shop in Miami, to lunch at a quiet spot near her store. She agreed to meet him Monday morning for coffee. Asher was starting his scheme to cause trouble at the Pumas bar. In Denver, he aimed to alter the letter and envelope from the Montgomery County Health Department to make it look like an official notice about a small HIV outbreak linked to the bar. Asher's workday was flexible, allowing him to focus on this project without much oversight. He quickly produced a draft of his fake notice and brought it to Jason for feedback. They polished it over coffee. "I like this, Asher. You might need to tweak it based on our previous discussions, but it's a solid start," Jason said, reading a line from the fake health department letter. A recent review of the last 3 months of HIV reports by the Montgomery County Health Team reveals 9 cases, 5 women and 4 men, all of whom visited the Plumas Din Bar on Indian Ripple Road at 6 and 75. Asher smiled, pleased. "I'm glad you think so. I enjoyed working on it. It's definitely illegal to forge something like this, and I hope you don't report me. Since I'm not telling anyone else about this plan, you're probably the only one who could do that." Jason laughed and responded, "I wouldn't dream of it, Asher. You're doing what most men wish they could when their wife cheats. There are plenty of people who'd admire your efforts. You're standing in for all of us who've suffered from a partner's infidelity." After leaving Jason, Asher had a productive lunch with Sandy and spent the afternoon making the final tweaks to his fake notice. He printed a new sample before heading back to the office. He knew avoiding the surveillance footage wouldn't make the task easier, so he resolved to face it head-on. Asher had taken Tuesday off, intending to visit his attorney in the afternoon. He knew this wouldn't make the process any easier. His plan was to create the illusion of heading to work, only to return home and devote as much time as necessary to reviewing the videos. There was no escaping it. He had to watch them, maybe even multiple times that morning. As he sat at his computer with a cup of coffee, he realized he was procrastinating, trying to avoid the inevitable pain that the footage would bring. He had resolved not to approach Letitia until he had watched everything. With an important appointment later in the day, Asher knew he needed to tackle the task promptly. He set up the video file for the right time and began with the footage from the living room. He focused solely on Letitia, ignoring the dark-haired man beside her. Asher watched as Letitia's top was removed, and the guy lifted her bra before they left the room. He then switched to the bedroom camera, which was activated by motion. Letitia entered first, undressing her bra. The blonde college guy followed, his excitement evident. Asher turned up the volume to catch their conversation. Letitia asked, "Help me take the covers off the bed. I don't want them messed up." They quickly cleared the bed, and Letitia waited as the guy moved around to her. They began kissing, and Letitia's hands roamed under his shirt. "You're so hot," he murmured. They paused briefly, and the guy noticed a large photo of Asher and Letitia. "Is that your husband?" "It must be. That's a new picture of you two. I guess he's just not enough for you anymore." He tried to kiss Letitia again, but she turned away and said, "He's still enough for me. This is just something different. I don't want to talk about him." They resumed kissing, their clothes quickly discarded. Asher watched as Letitia revealed herself to her lover. It was excruciating. He saw her reach for her bag, pull out condoms, and place them on the dresser. Asher could even read the brand as she opened a packet and handed it to the guy. "You know what to do with this," she said, and with a touch of eagerness added, "Since I first saw you at Pumas, I've wanted this." Letitia climbed onto the bed, and the sounds of squeaking springs, grunts, and Letitia's moans filled the room as the couple engaged in sex. After a few minutes of missionary position, Letitia silently pushed her partner away and got on her knees as he withdrew. Asher's anger intensified, and he felt his love for Letitia wane. A few minutes later, Dennis re-entered the room with Denise Grady, who had black hair. "I hope we're not interrupting anything," Dennis said with a throaty laugh. He continued, "It's a shame you're done. We were hoping to watch." Letitia's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She remained silent as Dennis and Denise exchanged smiles. Dennis added, I thought we agreed to knock before entering. If we'd finished first, that's what I would have done. Letitia seemed irritated with Denise. The two men smiled at each other, and Dennis stood beside Denise. Letitia also got up, and the man with Denise put his arm around her waist. "Join us when you're ready, Letitia. We don't mind if you watch, do we?" Asher saw Dennis place his hand on Letitia's shoulder as they all left the room together. Asher had seen portions of the video before, so Letitia with the dark-haired student in their bedroom didn't come as a shock. Watching the footage at normal speed, he observed Letitia and her new acquaintance. She leaned into the man, her new friend, as she got onto the bed on her knees. "Come on, Eric. It's Earl," Letitia urged. Earl promptly joined her, and they settled onto the bed, speaking little. Letitia glanced at the camera, then said, "Come on, Earl. Let's see if they're done. Denise wants me to watch her." They laughed and left the room, and Asher shifted the video focus from the master bedroom to the guest room. He saw his wife and Earl walk in and heard Letitia say, "We're here, Denise." Letitia seemed a bit hesitant, her face flushed with shyness. Denise greeted her. "I hope Earl isn't too tired. I think I can keep Dennis from finishing too soon if Earl wants to join." The scene quickly became intense, and Asher watched for several more minutes until everyone was finished. The situation felt oddly real, much more so than anything he'd seen in a film. There were a few mundane moments left in the video, and the conversations became dull. Dennis and Earl started dressing in the guest room, while Letitia and Dennis headed back to the main bedroom to get dressed. In less than 10 minutes, the house was restored to its original state. Asher watched as Letitia and Denise cleaned up, taking the wastebaskets out and returning them later. Despite the house looking as it always did, Asher knew he'd never view those rooms the same way again. When the last camera turned off, he froze the image of Letitia reaching up to turn off the bedside lamp, preparing to sleep. He saved this still frame, knowing it would become one of the most haunting images in his memory. Asher spent the next hour sorting through the video footage, creating separate files. One for the guest room scenes with Dennis and Earl, another for Dennis alone, and a third for Letitia and Earl together. He knew he needed to learn more about video editing to handle the third file better. With more work ahead, including creating additional videos featuring Letitia and her lovers, Asher prepared to meet his lawyer. On Wednesday, Asher had a busy morning with meetings and only managed a brief lunch with Jason. Finding Jason in the cafeteria, Asher said, "Sorry I couldn't talk earlier, Jason. I've been tied up with work. They've asked me to keep things quiet for now. I don't want to let them down." Jason gave him a curious look, but replied, "I understand." As Asher ate his sandwich, Jason asked, "How did it go with your lawyer? Did you get the answers you needed?" Asher took a moment before answering. "The meeting went well. I shared what I discovered with my surveillance system and discussed the divorce plans. My lawyer didn't agree with everything, but I insisted on my way and said we'd discuss any issues later. I'm still deciding when to serve Letitia, probably around mid-next week." Jason asked, "What has your sister said about your plans?" Asher replied, "She's very interested and has been checking on the details. We'll need to meet again to finalize a few legal matters." The two friends relaxed over their meal, with neither in a hurry. Asher had a busy weekend ahead, eager to put his plans into action. He was grateful for the ongoing support and determined to see his plans through. Pocket. Asher's voice was calm. "Thank you, Jason. You've been a great help through all of this. I just hope it all pays off and she feels at least a bit of what I'm feeling." Jason nodded and placed a reassuring hand on Asher's shoulder. "We'll get through this, Asher. Just remember to stay calm when you talk to Letitia. No matter what happens, keep your cool." Asher took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I'll try, Jason. I really will. Thanks for everything." As Asher left the conference room, he felt a mix of emotions. The anger and betrayal still burned inside him, but there was also a sense of determination. He was ready to confront Letitia and put his plan into action. The next few days would be critical, and he needed to stay focused. That evening, Asher went home, trying to act as normal as possible. Letitia greeted him with a smile, asking about his day. Asher managed to keep the conversation light, hiding the storm of emotions swirling inside him. They had dinner together, and Asher forced himself to stay engaged. even though every moment felt like a strain. On Thursday morning, Asher woke up early. Letitia was still asleep, and he quietly got ready for work. He had a meeting with his boss and needed to keep his mind on the job. But as he drove to the office, his thoughts kept drifting back to the plan and the confrontation that awaited him. During the meeting, Asher managed to focus and contribute, but his colleagues noticed he seemed distracted. His boss asked if everything was okay, and Asher assured him it was just personal matters that he was dealing with. After work, Asher met Jason again to go over the final details. They talked about the envelopes, the fake letters, and how to make sure nothing could be traced back to them. Asher appreciated Jason's meticulous planning and felt a bit more confident about their chances of success. When Friday came, Asher felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. He knew the weekend would be pivotal. He would confront Letitia on Saturday, and everything needed to be in place. He took a deep breath and steeled himself for what lay ahead. Saturday morning arrived, and Asher woke up with a sense of resolve. He watched Letitia move around the house, feeling a pang of sadness mixed with his anger. He reminded himself why he was doing this. It was about justice, about making her understand the pain she had caused. Around noon, while Letitia was out shopping, Asher set everything up. He double-checked the cameras, the audio recordings, and the fake letters. He made sure his evidence was secure and that he had everything he needed to confront her. When Letitia returned home, Asher was ready. He took a deep breath and approached her in the living room. "Letitia, we need to talk," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Letitia looked at him, a hint of concern in her eyes. "What's wrong, Asher?" He took out the envelope containing the fake health department letter and handed it to her. "I think you should read this." As Letitia opened the letter and started reading, Asher watched her expression change from confusion to shock and then to disbelief. "What is this, Asher? What's going on?" Asher took a deep breath and began to explain, laying out the evidence he had gathered and the plan he had set in motion. He watched as the color drained from Letitia's face, and she realized the extent of what he knew. By the time he was done, Letitia was sitting on the couch, her hands trembling. I don't know what to say, Asher. I never thought it would come to this." Asher stood tall, feeling a sense of vindication. "Neither did I, Letitia, but now you know, and now we both have to deal with the consequences." As the reality of the situation sank in, Asher felt a mixture of emotions. There was a sense of satisfaction, but also a deep sadness. The marriage he once cherished was over, but he knew it was the right thing to do. The confrontation marked the beginning of a new chapter in Asher's life. He was ready to move forward, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. Of tears. She could no longer deny what was evident in front of her. "Asher, where did you get these? How did you—" Asher interrupted her, his voice steady but filled with controlled anger. "I set up cameras, Letitia. I needed to know the truth, and now I do." Letitia's eyes widened in shock. "Cameras? You spied on me?" Asher leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "I had to, Letitia. You gave me no choice. These photos, these videos, they show everything. You lied to me, you cheated on me, and you betrayed our marriage." Tears began to stream down Letitia's face. "Asher, I never meant for it to go this far. I made a mistake." Asher shook his head, his expression one of both hurt and resolve. "A mistake? This wasn't just a mistake, Letitia. This was a series of choices you made, choices that destroyed everything we had." Letitia sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry, Asher. Please, let's talk about this. We can fix it." Asher stood up, the anger and pain evident in his posture. "There's nothing to fix, Letitia. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." Letitia's head snapped up, her face pale. "Divorce? Asher, please don't do this. I love you." Asher's expression hardened. "You don't love me, Letitia. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. It's over." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Letitia to her tears and the reality of her actions. He felt a strange sense of relief, knowing that he had taken the first step towards moving on from the betrayal and pain she had caused. As he left the house, Asher knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it. He had a plan, and he would make sure that Letitia felt the consequences of her actions. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. At him, her eyes pleading for any sign of understanding. Asher remained stoic, his face a mask of controlled rage. He leaned forward, his voice cold and steady. So, you admit it. You brought strangers into our home, into our bed, and you expect me to just accept that and move on? Letitia's tears flowed freely now. Asher, please, it wasn't about you. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I was confused, lost, but I love you. I never stopped loving you. Asher stood up, his anger finally breaking through. A mistake? A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. This was a betrayal of everything we had, everything we built together. You shattered my trust, Letitia. How can I ever believe you again? Letitia sobbed harder, her hands trembling. I'll do anything, Asher. Please, give me a chance to make it right. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. Don't throw away our marriage. Asher shook his head, his eyes cold. There's nothing left to save, Letitia. You threw it all away the moment you decided to cheat. This marriage is over. Letitia looked devastated, her hope slipping away. Please, Asher, don't do this. I can't lose you. I need you. Asher turned away, unable to look at her any longer. You should have thought about that before you decided to betray me. I'm done. With that, he walked out of the room, leaving Letitia alone with her guilt and regret. As he left the house, Asher felt a mixture of anger and sadness, but also a sense of relief. He had taken the first step towards freeing himself from the pain and betrayal. It was a long road ahead, but he was ready to face it, ready to move on and start anew. Won't be able to attend the Pumas anymore. Letitia's voice cracked as she pleaded, her eyes locked on Asher's. Asher's gaze hardened as he spoke, his voice laced with sarcasm. Oh, how noble of you, Letitia. Deciding to stop after you've already betrayed me multiple times. How considerate. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, then continued. But it doesn't change what you've done. It doesn't erase the lies, the deceit, and the utter disrespect for our marriage. Letitia's sobs grew louder, and she reached out to touch Asher's hand, but he pulled away sharply. Asher, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I want to make it right. I'll do anything to save our marriage. Please, don't give up on us. Asher shook his head slowly, his expression resolute. There's nothing left to save, Letitia. You've destroyed my trust. You've broken our vows, and now you have to face the consequences. Letitia looked down at the divorce papers, her hands trembling. Is there really no way we can work this out? No chance at all? Asher sighed deeply, his anger giving way to a profound sadness. I don't see how, Letitia. Every time I look at you, I'll see those images, hear those conversations. I'll remember the betrayal. I deserve better than this. I deserve someone who respects and loves me enough not to cheat. Letitia's tears flowed freely as she whispered, I'm so sorry, Asher. I love you. I never meant for it to end like this. Asher stood up, his heart heavy. I loved you too, Letitia, but love isn't enough when there's no trust. I'm moving forward with the divorce. It's the only way I can start to heal. With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Letitia sobbing on the couch, clutching the divorce papers. As he stepped outside, Asher felt a strange mix of emotions, pain, anger, and a glimmer of relief. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one he hoped would bring him peace and the chance to rebuild his life. Letitia stared at the papers, her face pale and streaked with tears. Asher, please, this isn't fair. How can you just decide all of this without talking to me first? I need more time. Asher shook his head firmly. I didn't come to this decision lightly, Letitia. I've spent weeks thinking about it, and this is the only way I can move forward. You have 10 days. Sandy will help you if you need it, but this is non-negotiable. Desperation crept into Letitia's voice. But Asher, I love you. Can't we go to counseling? Can't we try to fix this? Asher's expression softened for a moment, but his resolve remained. Letitia, I loved you too, but you shattered my trust. Counseling won't fix what you've done. Maybe it would help you understand why you did it, but it won't change the past. Letitia began to sob uncontrollably, realizing the finality of the situation. What am I supposed to do now? Where will I go? Asher stood up, his demeanor calm but resolute. You'll figure it out, Letitia. You always do. You can stay with Denise or find a place on your own. I've already made arrangements for everything else. As he walked towards the door, Letitia called out one last time, Asher, please, just give me another chance. He paused, his hand on the door handle, and turned to face her. I can't, Letitia. Too much has happened. Take the 10 days, find a new place, and move on. It's the best thing for both of us." With that, Asher left the room, leaving Letitia to her tears and the stark reality of their shattered marriage. The papers on the coffee table symbolized the end of their life together and the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter for both of them. Letitia was left in shock, her tears streaming down her face as Asher's final words echoed in her mind. She felt a deep sense of loss and regret, knowing that she had pushed her husband too far. Asher's resolve was unshakable, and she realized there was no way to mend what was broken. The weight of her actions had finally caught up with her, and she was left to face the consequences. As Asher walked out of the room, he felt a mix of relief and sorrow. He had loved Letitia deeply, but her betrayal had shattered his trust and their future together. He knew this was the only way forward for him, even if it was painful. His thoughts were already turning to his new life in Colorado Springs, away from the memories that haunted him in this house. Letitia, still seated on the sofa, glanced around the room that had once been filled with love and laughter. Now, it was a place of heartache and shattered dreams. She knew she had to accept Asher's decision and start planning her future without him. The next 10 days would be difficult, but she needed to find the strength to move on. Sandy arrived later that evening, bringing a sense of calm and order to the chaotic situation. She was understanding but firm, helping Letitia sort through her belongings and make plans for her next steps. It was clear that she was there to support her brother and ensure that the transition went smoothly. Over the following days, Letitia packed her things, the reality of her situation becoming more apparent with each passing moment. The house, once a home filled with shared dreams, was now just a shell of its former self. The process was emotionally draining, but it also gave her time to reflect on her mistakes and the path that had led her here. Asher, on the other hand, found solace in the thought of starting anew. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to embrace the challenges and build a life free from the pain of betrayal. As he prepared for his move, he felt a growing sense of hope for the future. Letitia's departure marked the end of a chapter filled with both joy and sorrow. As she closed the door behind her, she took one last look at the house, hoping that someday she might find forgiveness and peace. For now, she had to face the consequences of her actions and work towards rebuilding her life from the ground up. Letitia had somehow found the ability to shed even more tears, and she resumed her previous pattern of crying. In the end, she reached for additional tissues in order to dry her hot, wet eyes. Asher was the subject of her gaze, but she remained silent. He was curious as to whether or not she had finally come to the conclusion that there were no words to express her remorse. Several seconds later, once Asher had finished staring at his wife, he dug into his briefcase to examine his list of things that needed to be done. It dawned on him that there was one thing he had failed to confess to his wife, as he stated, "You've got one more thing to do to keep those videos off the web. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to call your folks and talk to your dad. He needs to know why we're splitting up. I don't want you feeding them some story about us just not getting along. You have to tell them the truth. Got it?" Letitia had been wiping her eyes and was now shaking her head slowly. "Please don't make me tell them what I've done. I can't tell them that. You have to give me some kind of break here." Asher looked at her coldly and said, "I don't care how tough it is for you. You're going to tell them you cheated on me. You don't need to go into all the details about swapping partners with Denise or watching her with those guys while you got off. They don't need all that. But you broke our marriage promises more than once, and that's what you need to tell them. Otherwise, they'll find out from the pictures." After one last look at his list, Asher closed his briefcase and set the lock. Now, only he could open it. He looked at his watch and saw it was almost time for his sister to come. He felt he could handle being in the same room with Letitia for a bit longer. Asher checked his watch again. Now it was time to call his sister. "Hello, Sandy. It's Asher. I just wanted to know how things went today." "Hi, Asher. Well, Letitia spent all evening crying after you left. I almost felt bad for her until I remembered what you said. I wasn't sure how she'd act with just us here, but it was okay." "Did she say much?" I was wondering if she might have said something to you she couldn't say to me. Not really, Asher. We talked a bit before she went to bed, but all she did was admit how much she messed up. Not the specifics, but the fact that she had messed up her entire life by herself is all that is important. I am aware that she called her friend Denise not too long before she went to bed, and she did not appear to care whether or not I overheard the call. What she had to say to that woman is not something that I am really concerned about. Additionally, she is going to earn hers. No matter what, she didn't say all that much. Her most recent statement to Denise was that she will most likely never communicate with her again. You had discovered everything there was to know about it, and we are going to end our marriage to her. At some point, she broke down in tears and slapped the phone down on the ground. Sandy, as I mentioned earlier, it is not really that important. If something is done, it cannot be undone. There is no turning back. How was your day today? She went to work this morning, didn't she? Do you really believe that she started looking for a new location to live? I believe she called Asher and gave him a reservation. Despite the fact that I didn't leave until almost 9 o'clock, she was still taking a cup of coffee while wearing her pajamas and sitting at the kitchen table. She appeared to be in a terrible state, and I don't believe she got much sleep. As soon as I arrived home, she was nowhere to be found, so I took a quick check around, and it appears that she is beginning to pack some things with her. The bedroom included a few boxes with various items, including cosmetics and other items. Therefore, I am delighted to learn that, because I didn't want to abandon you in the midst of a chaotic situation, in spite of the fact that you are now an adult, and I was. Without me being there, you would be able to take care of yourself. It is a pleasure to learn that she is beginning to take what I have said into consideration. A couple of days from now, I will give you another call to check on how things are going. To add insult to injury, I had no trouble entering the condo that my parents own. I sat near the pool and sat under a tree that provided shade for the majority of today. Perhaps tomorrow I will go swimming for a short period of time. At this very moment, all I want to do is relax. As much of that as you possibly can, you do it, Asher. I can't even begin to fathom the amount of stress you've been experiencing. If there is something that is of critical importance, I will phone you at that location. Not a single thing ought to be present. In a few days, I will have a conversation with you. They both said bye, and as he put down the phone, Asher found he had the matchbox again, ready to count them one more time. By the end of the week, Letitia had vacated the house, taking with her many of the best chairs, appliances, and countless small items, including plates, forks, and other kitchen utensils. The chairs Sandy didn't want were donated to Goodwill. When asked, Letitia informed Sandy she was moving to an apartment in Centerville and provided the address and phone number to relay to Asher. However, Asher told his sister he had no interest in knowing Letitia's new location. 2 weeks later, as he settled into his new job in Colorado Springs, Sandy inquired again, but Asher remained indifferent. One night, Asher called his friend Jason to get an update on the fake letters he had sent to all the college groups. Jason had his worker Jim, a young guy who used to monitor the bar's crowd, keep tabs on the situation. Jim had news that Jason wanted to share. Apparently, Jim had learned from friends who still frequented the Puma's den that the bar had hit a rough patch. Suddenly, only a handful of men were showing up each night, which in turn made many women leave when they saw the small crowd. This trend continued, leading to an even smaller turnout of women. Jim speculated that the men might have found a better place to go. Settling into life in Colorado Springs kept Asher busy, and he didn't call Jason back for a few weeks. In fact, he had attempted to call him once or twice, but didn't get a response, and hadn't left a message because he was unsure of his own availability. When he finally connected with Jason, he was eager to share some encouraging news. 2 days ago, Asher, I was having a conversation with Jim, Jason said. The doors at the Puma's den in Denver were padlocked. One of Jim's buddies told him about it. The door had a notice stating the landlord had taken possession of the property due to the tenant's failure to pay the rent. Another thing he heard was that a bluegrass bar is planning to open up in that spot. Asher, I'm willing to bet you'll consider that to be very wonderful news, won't you? Jason laughed loudly. Asher responded quickly. To put it another way, it doesn't get much better than that. It blows my mind that the place could have gone under so quickly. I guess their financial situation was too precarious to sustain even a few weeks of poor performance. On the other hand, I can't say that the news has made me feel any kind of distress, he added with a touch of satisfaction. I, too, have some excellent news to share. As I was talking to my sister over the weekend, she informed me that she had received a phone call. Letitia, who was acting very agitated, called her. Apparently, Denise had called Letitia and yelled at her, claiming that someone, most likely me, had ruined her life. Denise was furious and told Letitia that she had lost her job because someone had contacted her current workplace. It seems like karma is catching up with them. Jason couldn't contain his laughter. It sounds like things are finally turning around for you, Asher. I hope this gives you some peace of mind. You've been through a lot, and it's about time you got some good news. Asher smiled, feeling a sense of closure. Thanks, Jason. It does feel like things are starting to look up. I'm ready to move forward and leave all this behind me. The two friends continued their conversation, sharing stories and catching up, as Asher felt a newfound sense of hope and determination for the future. He felt an immediate connection with Mary, not just because of the shared grief and understanding, but because of her genuine kindness and warmth. Unlike his previous relationship, there was an authenticity in Mary that Asher found incredibly refreshing. Over time, their bond grew stronger, and Asher found himself spending more time with her and her children. Mary's kids, a boy named Jack and a girl named Lenora, were hesitant at first. They had lost their father and were wary of a new man stepping into their lives, but Asher's patience and genuine care gradually won them over. He never tried to replace their father, but instead became a supportive and loving figure in their lives. Asher's new family brought a sense of completeness he hadn't felt before. He took pleasure in the small, everyday moments, helping Jack with his homework, attending Lenora's ballet recitals, and spending quiet evenings with Mary. These simple joys helped him heal from the deep wounds left by his first marriage. Asher's professional life also flourished. He was instrumental in expanding Abstract Devices Inc.'s operations in Colorado Springs. His leadership and expertise were recognized, leading to a promotion. With a stable and fulfilling career, Asher felt he was finally in a good place. Mary and Asher's relationship deepened, and they decided to marry in a small, intimate ceremony. Unlike his first marriage, this one was built on mutual respect, love, and a shared commitment to family. Mary's parents, who adored Asher for his dedication to their daughter and grandchildren, were overjoyed. Years passed, and Asher's past gradually faded into the background. Letitia, once a dominant figure in his life, became a distant memory. He heard through the grapevine that she had another child and was trying to make her marriage work, but he no longer felt any connection to her. One day, as Asher was cleaning out some old boxes, he came across the matchbox from the Puma's den. It brought back memories, but they no longer held the same power over him. He realized how far he had come and how much he had grown. With a smile, he tossed the matchbox into the trash, symbolizing the final closure of that chapter of his life. Asher's life with Mary and the kids was full of love and laughter. They traveled, explored new hobbies, and cherished every moment together. Jack went on to college, and Lenora pursued her passion for dance, both excelling in their endeavors with Asher and Mary's unwavering support. As he watched his family thrive, Asher knew he had made it through the darkest times. His new life, filled with genuine love and happiness, was more than he had ever hoped for. The pain of the past had shaped him, but it no longer defined him. Asher Phillips had finally found his peace. Almost a year after their last work talk, Asher and Mary bumped into each other at the store. The chance encounter felt serendipitous, and they started to date soon after. It didn't take long for Asher to realize that Mary was the right one for him. Her genuine kindness and warmth were exactly what he needed. When she confided that she felt the same way about him, they didn't hesitate to get married. Their love story was a testament to second chances and the healing power of love. Now, they are eagerly awaiting the arrival of their first baby, a boy, who is due to be born just after their first wedding anniversary. Their home is filled with anticipation and joy as they prepare for the newest addition to their family. The nursery is painted a soft blue, and every detail has been thoughtfully considered, from the cozy crib to the plush toys waiting to be cuddled. Jason Shields and Heidi West, who had married a bit before Asher and Mary, were close friends. Both couples attended each other's weddings, celebrating the new chapters in their lives together. Their bond grew stronger with each shared moment, from double dates to family gatherings. The camaraderie and mutual support between the two couples were invaluable, making their journeys even more special. Asher is trying to persuade Jason and Heidi to consider moving to Colorado Springs, where a significant job opportunity in the technical services department is opening up. He knows that having his best friend and his family close by would make their lives even more fulfilling. The idea of raising their children together and sharing everyday moments brings a smile to Asher's face. As they look to the future, Asher and Mary are filled with gratitude for the paths that led them to each other. Their story is a reminder that life can surprise us with unexpected joy when we least expect it. The trials and tribulations of the past have only made their present happiness sweeter. Dear listeners, let me know what you think below, and don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us as we continue to share stories of love, resilience, and the beauty of second chances.